Research and development funding is important because we always talk about innovation, right? And innovation is really what we want our manufacturers to do. Obviously, this is really important when we talk about things like advanced manufacturing. And, the president, everyone likes to talk about how we need to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. And when he talks about that, when everyone talks about that, they're talking about advanced manufacturing, which is really specialized jobs, and then, of course, requires a lot more innovation and technology. So you should think of R&D funding as sort of like the lifeblood of the industry.
So, Nyla, I know we lost a lot of manufacturing jobs during the recession. Is that why R&D funding is down?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not exactly clear why we lost all of this funding. One thing that's really important, though, is that Chicago lost, a lot of jobs in manufacturing, but so did a lot of other cities, and their R&D funding went up. So our funding loss is disproportionate. So a lot of the data that we're talking about today comes from the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, and they authored this report. So I posed the question you asked me to one of the report's authors. He's a policy analyst. His name is Garrett, Ballard, Rosa, and this is what he had to say.
Our R&D in the Chicago region has really been tied to manufacturing. When firms shifted some production abroad, they also shifted that research capabilities abroad as well. We also think that the region hasn't been as nimble as some of other regions in the United States in responding to new technologies.
So there's two reasons that he gave there. One, which is a really interesting one, is that when we offshored these jobs, we also offshored R&D. One example of that is electronics. This used to be a big center of electronics R&D, and now like 90% of that research and development is done in Asia. And one of the reasons why this is so important is where the research is where the manufacturing is. The other thing he talked about is saying we haven't been as nimble as other regions. And he's talking about cities like Boston and San Francisco, where they have very concentrated areas of manufacturing. Boston focuses on biotech, San Francisco, obviously, like Silicon Valley and those sorts of things. We have a lot of different things that we do in manufacturing here, so that we cover a wide variety of industries. So that's part of what he's talking about, saying we haven't been as nimble in responding to.
And how do we turn that around then?
Well, when you ask agencies like CMAP what role government should play, they say, of course, that they think private industry has to take the lead here because they're the ones that have to fund their own research and development. But one important thing to remember is most of the manufacturers here in Chicago are really small companies, 50 employees or less. And I think when we think about companies with R&D budgets, we think about huge companies like Abbott Labs and how much money they have to devote. So there's definitely, a lot of, there's some federal funding that happens for small businesses that is no longer matched by the state of Illinois. So there are those issues. But one thing, that they did suggest was we have a great resource here in Chicago with all of our universities and also with our national labs. We have Fermi and we have Argonne National Lab. And they think that we have a unique advantage where we should be collaborating more with them. So I actually did speak to the director of Argonne National Labs, Eric Isaacs, about this yesterday, and this is what he said.
We as a laboratory have been nationally focused, and I think are just realizing the value of having, in addition to national, we're not going to give that up, have a local focus. And so I think you'll see a lot more coming from the laboratory in the coming years. We're looking to build up not just small companies, but also interactions with large companies.
So, of course, this is something that's going to take some time, but it sounds like it's something that national labs want to work on as well, too.